Okay, good afternoon, everybody. This is Jim Whalen. This is episode 50, big build up for this episode for the Sports Consiglieres podcast. I am your host, Jim Whalen. Along with me is the proud son of Jersey City, the pride of Greenville,
That's
Jersey
right.
City, the voice of Woodridge football, the coach of Woodridge girls soccer team, father of two, married happily. My buddy, my pal, my consigliere, Jerry. Jerry, how you doing on this fine afternoon?
Now, Jimmy, this is episode
5-0.
50, and let me tell you, you saved the best introduction for a milestone episode. And I'm
Okay.
glad you said happily when you mentioned my marital status.
Well, I was getting some flack in the Whalen household that we should be doing the 100th episode, not the 50th. The 50th is not a milestone. So I was thinking, I don't know how much longer we're going to be doing this. So 50's here. So we'll celebrate 50. We'll
Well,
celebrate 50.
it's good to see they have the confidence that we're gonna get to
Yeah.
100. So that's the plus right there. But
Yeah.
yeah, 50. It seems like yesterday.
Yeah. It
You,
definitely
you
does. And then,
Yeah, you sent me a bag of Skittles and said, "This is
yeah.
what we're gonna pay you. Come on out, come on in."
Yeah, and then I still haven't paid you that though.
No, the
But
Skittles are stale. So
and I gotta apologize to you. I posted that I'm from the podcast. I'm from Jersey City, and you're not, and that was an April Fool's joke.
that was
You
good. Though.
thought
You're
you
giving
told
me
me that.
something though.
Yeah, but
I think you're giving me with my solo career.
yeah, yeah, you think so? So if this ever fractures off like Mike and the Mad Dog, you got something going on there.
Or Mike and
But
Mike. Yeah,
yeah, Mike and Mike.
when you pull a
So
Greenberg on me, I have a
yeah.
solo career to fall back on.
Yeah, so I posted a lot of the old episodes. I don't know, I might have overdid it, but whatever. I just wanted to throw some flowers to some of the guests that we had, some of the episodes we have. So, a couple things. We got some love from your Hoyas, Gene Smith, Billy, uh, and for two episodes, he hooked us up with the one episode, and with Billy Martin, and then we also had two former Montreal Expos on. Danny Gallagher, shout out to him. He helped us with Larry Parrish and also um, Don DeMola, who was a pitcher. And then we also had one state senator on, Ray Lisniak, to talk about legalized gambling. One McDonald's All American, which I think I set up before we started, but that was episode number 2. Bobby Martin, who got recruited by Cal out of Pitt. And we also had the painter. I think you missed that one, James Fiorentino, but his
Yep.
his his work is synonymous with baseball. And we also had one college uh, coach, which you were able to do it solo without me. I had some internet problems, and then Joe Klicko, you missed that one. That was a good one. He's in Canton Hall of Fame. Michael Ray Richardson, former Nick, former Net. Two guys you hooked us up with the soccer episodes. I know that you weren't happy with, or some of our viewers. One particular one wasn't happy with the soccer, but
He still
Michael,
carries on about
yeah,
it.
yeah. And then also we had 9 guests affiliated with the Giants. So I think that was probably our biggest achievement. Listen, all the guests were an achievement, but having some of the names on there was a good, you know, it gave the show some credibility. And also, I think we had a bunch of authors on. So take it from here, Jerry. So, what do you think? 50 episodes in, I'm glad you agreed to come on, and I'm glad that we started the show. And I think it opened doors that we probably never thought we'd walk through. But so what's your look on 50?
Oh,
50
agreed.
years?
I appreciate you asking me to come on. It's been an honor. It's been a lot of fun. I never thought it seemed like, and 95% of that is all your hard work. It's like you get George Martin, Stephen, and it just keep Billy Yard. It keeps going. Michael Ray Richardson. It's like every page that was turned, we're getting another, not only a guest, a quality guest, a quality name, if you will, in the sports world. And then I often felt that, the interviews were very insightful. Every Giant that we had, took us back to either one of the two Super Bowls under Parcells. And then also too, what I think is important, we had like Billy Taylor on. He filled in some of the blanks, like the pre-Parcells, the Ray Perkins when things were turning. Then we had like a guy like Keith Elias. He took us on like the post Parcells when he came in with Reeves and just different things. So we covered. I would say like the Giant. I mean, obviously, the Giant game was special for me. But we covered a lot of period. Robustelli's son, Bob Robustelli. That was good. We covered a lot of different periods. In regards to the New York Giants, which I thought was outstanding. And then the college basketball aspect of our show, from having, Coach Donald Copeland Jr. from Wagner. He was an assistant at Seton Hall, a very good career at Seton Hall as a player, a tremendous career at St. Anthony's in Jersey City. Then you look back and Willie Glass and, Bobby, Billy Martin. We had, Bobby Martin, Gene Smith. Those legendary. Basically how the Big East, was growing, and then they were there when the Big East kind of, revived, thrived, if you will. Excuse me. And now, we had on, Wilshire's dad.
And he just transferred to Texas, so he was.
Yeah,
but
he
it was a
transferred
good.
out of St. John's, but it was good to really have him on. Was he gave us the insight about how his son kind of landed with Pitino, so he gave us more of a present day status, if you will, of the Big East and St. John's basically, recapturing their glory, and then again, like you said, the authors, the Expos angle I found very interesting. Because I think what I found very interesting about that is you're talking about an area that doesn't have a team, and yet the passion is sky high. I mean, Danny Gallagher. I mean, putting out the birthday tweets, from each player. I mean, and then to talk to, Larry Parrish, who was a very, very good, in the 70s, 80s, a very good right-handed power hitter, with Montreal and then also with the Texas Rangers. And again, like. And then you look into the artsy type thing. We had the painter on, the different authors, just all different avenues in sports, and we kind of try to stay on topic, if you will, like the Giants, college basketball, a little NBA, a little bit of baseball, and I think there's a lot of diversity. That we've had some, a very diverse guest, and we have a lot of diversity, on the show. And that's what makes it exciting. And then, obviously to fill in, if you will, to fill in the blanks, we do, just you and I, which to me is the most fun, when we just sit here and then just kind of go at it with current events, pretty much in the New York market. But, we also touch upon things, league wide as well.
Yeah.
So it's been a blast. It's been a blast.
And I was looking at some of our views just to kind of track, and episode 25, George Martin had the most views. Obviously, I mean, he's a household name. He's a Giant. He was a union rep. He introduced Parcells into Canton, but just a little diversity. Eric Stover was number 2.
Oh.
So I mean, he was a great guest, but also soccer, and then Richard Kaner. So the last two, you kind of directed me into that direction. So high school basketball, new league soccer, and established Giants. So you can't say Sports Consiglieres without sports. So it just goes to show you how diverse the show's been, and how great the guests have been. So I mean, I enjoy finding out about people, finding out what brought them to that point. How was it when they were successful, and what they're doing now. So I mean, it really is for me. I love doing the show. So, 50, I hope we do 500 episodes. But, I thought it was important just to kind of take a breath and look back and see what we had done. And it really has been a lot. And then just be optimistic for the future. So, I mean, for the first 50 episodes, I think we've really, really done well. And it's really, really been fun. And even like covering stuff like Saquon Barkley, that signing, the draft, all that stuff like you talk about. Some of our better shows are the ones we just kind of talk about the state of the New York landscape. So
Yeah, and absolutely. And I think too, like what was great about, like we're both big college basketball guys. I mean, that goes way back. And I think what really got us, if you will, what our juices going was our ability to really, talk about St. John's. Because I think that was, right. Well, right. Listen, after the other night, right now, I was going to say they're the biggest story in New York basketball, but after the Knicks game one win the other night, I think how this series goes, St. John's could be number 2 story of the year. But, the Knicks still have a long way to go. But, anyway, getting back to like the guest, I mean, like you said, you look at like Richard Canner, Jersey guy, really gave us a very, very good dive, if you will, into Hudson County hoops, which is legendary. You saw a lot of those guys go on to bigger and better things. And, that it was also too, not just St. Anthony's, but, you're talking, various players from, the various, eras that have gone on to do good things from Hudson County. And then you look at a guy like, you have Richard Canner on, like a local author, has done well with the book. You have Joe Klecko on, like he's a Hall of Famer, probably the most popular Jet, I would say. He's definitely top 3 most popular Jet. Was also my favorite actor in Cannonball Run.
Yeah, you sure. And you didn't make you didn't make that episode. But
I didn't make that episode.
But you got to make sure you made sure that I brought that up. So
yep, him and Terry Bradshaw.
Yeah. But
they drove for the Coors Bank with beer.
Yeah, and he was he was driving a truck to practice in Temple, so he was a regular guy. But yeah,
blue collar guy, regular guy, absolutely.
Yeah, but looking back at that,
George Martin, I thought, like you mentioned, George Martin. I mean, George Martin, he really took us a lot of different ways. Very articulate gentleman. He got us into the kind of like the good, the bad, and the ugly, not in that order about his giant career. It was ugly when he got there. It was bad, then it went to bad, then it got kind of good, and then he got into the Parcells years, and he was a very pivotal part, of that first Super Bowl, team, that first championship team under Coach Parcells. And then I thought along that line, one of our most underrated guests, I think, I could have listened to him all day, was Johnny Parker, who was Coach Parcells' strength and conditioning coach at multiple stops, not just with the Giants. Yeah. And I thought he really, filled us in. He gave us a nice kind of backdrop, what players, mentioning George Martin being one of the nicest players that he's ever encountered. And, that's what's fun, is because, you look at a guy like, I mean, we could go all day with this, each and every guest, but you look at kind of like the ex-players, and you look at how a guy like, Bill Martin got recruited, by Coach Thompson, and the backdrop with, Bill Martin talking about the conversations that his mom had with Coach Thompson. I mean, you're not going to get that anywhere else. And then, a guy like Gene Smith, really crediting, Thompson coming to see, somebody else, which was Martin, not him. And, really how he had a 4-year career where he worked his rear end off, and was known as, as a defensive player. And he really turned into, an all-time great, Georgetown Hoya.
And he was the captain. So, I mean, for Thompson to make him the captain just spoke highly of what type of player he was, what kind of leader he was. So,
and then from there, to another angle, and obviously to the viewers, going forward, we're going to start really hitting the Yankees hard. But like, one thing is like covering, it was like a history lesson on the fly, doing the research and I was only able to partake in the beginning part of the episode, but getting the kind of the backdrop and the historical perspective of Japanese baseball,
Yeah.
that was very, very, very
Yeah.
powerful. I'm a history buff, but I mean, it was very insightful. Ken
Yeah.
was very insightful.
Yeah. It definitely was, and then he's going to be at the Hall of Fame this year. So, and then two of our
Yeah,
guests will be at the him and James Fiorentino will be at the Hall of Fame. I think he made the program this year for the
yeah,
Hall of Fame. So, I mean, it's been great. And I think the most thing I appreciate of everybody is the time listening, the time watching, and the
sure.
guests, the time that they're giving it up. So, I mean, that's as you get older, that's like the most valuable commodity
Sure.
is
We have
time. So,
a lot of ex colleagues or current colleagues that follow the show. I appreciate the banter. I mean, I had a lot of a lot of my ex colleagues fired up when I made the statement if the Barkley has a good Super Bowl, and was to win the MVP, and the Eagles did win the Super Bowl. Barkley played a minimal role in the Super Bowl, but he played a very instrumental role in getting them to the Super Bowl. That he was going to be the greatest Eagle. That got people fired up. I like to see that, the passion. I was all prepared to defend my position if Barkley had a quote unquote lights out Super Bowl. But I mean, again, that was like you said, that was a huge topic for us to cover because unfortunately last year, I mean, every time you turned around, he was sticking it to the Giants in more ways than one because he was having he had a tremendous year. And that's
and
one thing that I think will stay with Joe Shane. I know, everybody's kind of moved forward. I think he had he had a great draft last year. I think he had a good draft this year. Time will tell. But ultimately, we go back to that. Like, listen, the Giants, I think, made it clear that they weren't going to pay him, didn't want to pay him, positional value in their mind. And I just don't understand why they didn't try to move him to get not only get something, right, but steer him away for where you didn't have to see him twice a year for the next few years. That's what I think, really I have a hard time digesting is not only you let him walk, you got zero compensation, but now we have to watch him twice a year, for the foreseeable future. And,
yeah,
it
and
stings. It stings.
it definitely did sting. And I think Hard Knocks really opened up a can of worms for the Giants. Just seeing the behind the scenes and having John Mara says, "I just hope he doesn't go to Philly," and he goes to Philly. And I mean, he's got to have some sleepless nights after that. But
Sure.
I think credit to Shane. I think that for whatever reason, I think if he traded him, he would be criticized. If he didn't,
Yeah, absolutely.
if he didn't sign, so I think for whatever reason, he made a decision. He stuck with the decision, and you know, everybody agrees. All Giants fans said he wouldn't have the season he had with Philly if he was with the Giants. I mean, he was getting injured a lot.
Sure.
The team was in transition, so. But having to go to Philly is that was a tough pill to swallow. So
Yeah, I mean that's always the cardinal rule of sports, right? Just we got to move them. That's why in any sport, you don't see too many people making trades within their own division for that reason. You don't want to see this guy. You don't want this guy burning you. But and then another gentleman shifting gears a little, like you talk about a guy, and I told you this before. I mean I'm very very. I've watched his career very closely, and he's done a marvelous job. Probably doesn't get enough credit in sports. And I know we're going to hit our favorite viewer, one of our favorite viewer, Pat Monahan's favorite topic, which is soccer. But man, Eric Stover in his career, he was very instrumental in the move from old Giant Stadium to the Red Bulls getting their own place, Red Bull Arena, which is now Sports Illustrated Stadium out in Harrison. He was very instrumental, one, in getting that accomplished. Two, he was very instrumental in getting Thierry Henry, Arsenal legend, won the World Cup with France to play for the Red Bulls. And he came over and he had a very good career for the Red Bulls. That's two. And then three, which is kind of a sad story. The ending is sad, and this has nothing to do with Eric, but Eric rebooted the reboot, if you will, of the New York Cosmos. And I not only attended in person, I lived that reboot And he was very successful to put a quality product outside of the MLS structure on the field where the Cosmos were able to compete in the U.S. Open Cup and fare very well, not only against MLS teams, not just MLS teams, but our local MLS teams being the Red Bulls and New York City FC. And those were some of the most exciting local games that I watched. Unfortunately, the Cosmos, I don't want to say they folded again. Right now, they're on this long-term hiatus, if you will. That's a whole nother story. But Eric did a really good job bringing players in outside of the MLS structure. Marco Senna, who is a legendary player from Spain. Raul, a legendary player from Real Madrid. Very good career, and ultimately to get those players to come to play for the Cosmos, not in the MLS, is unbelievable. I don't think many people really understand, Eric's skills, if you will, and his ability to lead and build organizations almost from scratch. I mean, he took the Red Bulls, who were really struggling with their business product, and he took them here. He took the Cosmos from a paper team, and expanded them where they were getting some play. And now Eric is on his, if you will, his third venture of the professional local scene for soccer, which is right now they're going by North Jersey Pro. More information coming from Eric and that organization shortly, name, sporting director, and head coach. So I just want to give, Eric his flowers, if you will, because his career has really been one of really a fascinating venture for me to follow.
Yeah, and then also he didn't really grow up as a soccer fan. They really, until he saw it working
Right.
at Giant Stadium, and that's when he kind of really embraced it, and
Yep.
even had a position over in Europe too before this current venture. So I mean, definitely instrumental in the soccer scene. And I guess the Red Bull Stadium, now Sports Illustrated Stadium, he catered that to a lot of the European stadiums. And then I guess with the summer coming up, they have the tournament this year and they have the World Cup next year. I mean that this area is going to be,
It's going to be hopping.
hotbed of soccer. So but
And then
just
really sticking on the soccer thing real quick, we've had Michael Lewis, who has the phenomenal website Front Row Soccer, and he really took us, from the 70s or even before the 70s. He gave us a really good landscape from the 60s, the old NASL, indoor soccer we covered right to the MLS. He had the great comment that he didn't think the MLS would have lasted 5 years, and now we're going strong 25 years later of Major League Soccer in the United States, and the league is really doing well.
Yeah, and then looking back too, like we covered the 1990 Yankee team, that documentary. So that was a pretty bleak time in Yankee history. So, but that was the Andy Hawkins no hitter that he lost, and also the whole Mel Hall thing. I mean that was a crazy
It
time
was
to be a giant. It was a crazy time to be a
that almost,
Yankee fan.
and I'm glad you brought that up because that almost is one of those things when you watch it. I always think you have to watch it twice to say, like, man, did some of this stuff really happen? I mean, the Mel Hall stuff. I mean, geez,
Yeah, I
that's
mean
that. I'm not even going to get into that, at all, really. But it's a sad story, and there was a lot of victims, and it was just the fact that was, I don't want to say what's the term I'm looking for here. I don't really want to get too much into this, but I mean, it's a shame what happened. I guess that he was allowed, to really go about his business, if you will, and in front of everybody. And, I guess it was just, maybe it was just a different time. I mean, 1990, I was
yeah.
in high school. I mean, it was just a different time, but man, I mean, you talk about something that was beyond bizarre, and that was the telltale of the story. And I'll never forget, I think what I took out of that, which I thought was really the undoing of Mel Hall to get him out of Yankee pinstripes, was the fact that he was like really verbally abusive to Bernie Williams, and that's why he got jettisoned because and obviously I think the 1990 documentary, you see the seeds being planted on what was to come, a few years later. And I think to really sum up, Mel Hall is a child predator. He's away a very long time in jail. I don't want to get onto my legal soapbox here, but I am. He is a child predator. But I think to show you his character is a story from Buck Showalter where Mel Hall was visibly upset and made a comment on Old Timers Day, insulting the old timers about the current players having to share the locker room with the old timers, and he actually made a comment about doing that. So I think that really sums up Mel Hall's Yankee career, and the type of person that he was. He thought he was obviously way better than he was, and unfortunately, he got to wear. I don't think he didn't deserve to wear the pinstripes, and he didn't deserve to do a lot of things. But like you said, the organization took a lot of steps back, I think, from 1990, but ultimately that got them, to go forward. But fascinating documentary for a lot of things. I mean, Mel Hall's story, Pascual Perez. I mean, there's some really entertaining characters.
And you talk about Bart Giamatti. We had Keith O'Brien on with his book.
Yep,
Pete
good.
Rose, he was a great guest, and Pete Rose ended up passing away a few weeks after the fact. But
a few weeks after,
I mean, but that was an interesting time in baseball. He got banned. Steinbrenner got banned from baseball, and Pete Rose banned from baseball. So it was an interesting time. Bart Giamatti ends up passing away. Faye Vincent takes over. So we cover that in some of our past episodes. So that
I liked how too. And again, like you talk about real quick, like Keith came on. He wrote it. That was a fantastic book he wrote about Pete Rose. But then to get Keith to come on and he gives us like the backstory of what was kind of going on, like these meetings that Rose and Rose's representation were having, with Giamatti in the league. I mean, that's the beauty. That's an example right there of why we have guests on is to get a story told, if you will, to get them to tell their story, right, based on their experiences, their research, whatever. And then that's something for our viewers to take going forward. And, it was Pete Rose. I mean, even now, you have the president of the United States. He's getting involved, put him in the Hall of Fame. I mean, he's a polarizing figure.
Yeah. But awesome player. I mean, figure, I don't think that record would ever be broken. But he's definitely a polarizing figure. But just taking back to you personally, I mean, I asked you to come on the show. Did you think, what was your interpretation? I mean, I was doing this solo, and granted, I had no idea. I know we talk and work, but I had really no idea just a detail and how. I knew you were a sports fan. I didn't really know how much of how much recall of information you had, which is really great for the show. Really great for me because it helps the show along. But what was your interpretation when I asked you to come on? Like, did you think that you were going to come on for this was like a flash in the pan? Like, what, or did you think this was going to be something that was going to last? What did you think?
I thought when I came on, the one thing that I'll say that was a pleasant surprise and a big positive for me is I really thought, based on what you already accomplished, I was going to come on and we were just going to do guests. And I think I never realized, or I probably didn't have the foresight to really to see like, we're going to do guests. We're going to talk 1v1, if you will, one-on-one about topics, kind of combine the two, so I think that's what, I think when I first came on, I thought it was going to be like really like a Q&A, me and you and a guest. And I think the pleasant surprise of that is it became more than that, which is good for the show. And I think we have balance, we have diversity, the guests speak for themselves. I mean, everybody wants to know, what we're paying these people. We can't go public with that. That's those terms are always undisclosed, but the guests are really really phenomenal. And then going forward, we're working on a lot of things now, as we've talked about off camera, to kind of really dive headfirst, if you will, into the current baseball season. So
Yeah. Well, I mean, the only thing Yankees keep on losing, but Boston keeps on losing. They're still in first place. So Yankees are an interesting story this year. So
the
we'll
Yankees
see
always
Saturday.
are an interesting story, but I'll say this, they call it the spring from hell, and every time you turn around, somebody else is getting hurt. I mean, the other night they had no middle infield.
Yeah.
Of course they have a closer who all my Met friends tell me he still hasn't gotten. Devin Williams still hasn't gotten over the home run by Polar Bear off him in the playoffs. So now they transition Luke Weaver, who's done. The other night, 2 nights ago, was the first night he gave up a run all year. But
Yeah.
how they're winning is unbelievable. I think it's a big story because Max Fried and Carlos Rodon are really. I think they're 14-11 when those two guys pitch. I mean, Fried is having some year. Rodon has turned it on. Thank God, because
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
Freed's going.
they just designated Carrasco for assignment.
Yeah. I
So
mean, Freed's having a Cy Young
there's a
year,
lot to
and
attack there, and we'll do that in a future episodes. But
yeah,
there's a lot to attack.
and then Judge. Judge is. I mean, he's on a different stratosphere.
Unbelievable year.
Yeah, but and then also we got the Knicks to talk about. I know we're going to kind of concentrate on the Yankees, but the Knicks and NBA. But
Well,
all in all,
we got to satisfy our number one Knicks listener, which is Jimmy Higgins. So he was
okay.
in the middle of a meltdown the other night. He was texting me when the Knicks were down 20, and then I got nervous because then I didn't hear from him until like 3 hours after the game. So I guess he recovered.
Yeah,
But
but talk about,
again, that was I always say this, right? Basketball in the New York, New Jersey area is a special treat for fans when the Johnnies are good and when the Knicks are good. And, you look at the Detroit series, the Pistons series with the Knicks, people are like, why did it go this far? And now, Knicks fans have a whole new perspective, after game one to be down by 20. I would have bet heavy that they would have lost. Not that I gambled, that they would have lost in overtime. So to overcome a 20-point lead and then to beat them in overtime in Boston. But then again, this Knicks team is becoming like the 07 Giants. They're like the Road Warriors. I don't think they like playing at the Garden.
yeah. Well, I mean, Bridges. I mean that those plays that he made saved the
No,
game.
he had a great game. Even the steal at the end, and it's unbelievable.
And then I don't know if you watched last night's game at Cavs and Pacers, but Halliburton. I mean, Cavs had that game won. That was a bad loss for the Cavs. But and then we forgot
Kenny
about
Atkinson, Long Island's own.
Yeah, and he was in that. And we forgot about I busted out my my.
Oh, we got to
jacket.
listen.
The starter jacket. So
we my man, Carl Banks. I love him. I'm going to say this, Carl. We love the love that you gave us. We had some repost on Carl Banks' Instagram. Carl Banks is my second favorite Giant. Phil Simms is first. Phil came before Carl, but Carl Banks is my second favorite Giant. And Carl has done a wonderful job reintroducing the starter brand because as anybody that grew up in the 80s, starter was it. And we could name the jackets we had. I mean, I had a Washington Bullets jacket. I had the famous red Giant Bill Belichick jacket. I had a Georgetown jacket. And Carl has done a great job. I mean, the St. John's. What I loved about what he did with the St. John's line is he had the white one, he had the red one, and then he had like the navy one, which was very rare back in the day. He brought that back, and then what he did is he actually incorporated the current players basically to model these things. I think they had like an event in Macy's in like Herald Square or whatever.
Yeah.
So Carl really, really, really is on point with what's happening at starter. I know they just released a nice baseball line. But
yeah, so I mean,
Carl showed us a lot of love on social media.
Nice retro. But I was just showing. I ripped my jacket. I was at a party. I think it was 17, and I think I got raided by the cops. I had to hop the fence and ripped the sleeve. So, well, like I said, but that was my Clemson jacket. That
here's the question. We got to. I know you don't want to continue with the story, but how high was the fence?
Probably 3 foot. Listen, you gotta. You grew up in the city. You had to hop fences. You had to hop
fence
fences.
hopping is a lost
hop fences to go to a playground, hop fences to go to your friend's house. So what was it?
Yeah.
What are they? 4-foot fences? So it's a regular chain link fence. So, but yeah, but all in all, but Jerry, it's been a great ride, and
Absolutely. And I
I
can't believe, like I said, that we hit episode 50. I mean, the guests have been incredible. The subject matter, and I, like you said, just to touch upon it again, is just the feedback that we get from some listeners. Is very positive. We have all sorts of characters in our lives that that follow the program. They like to see what's going on, and like I said, you'd be hard pressed to find a local podcast like ours to have, a diverse group of guests consistent. It's
yeah.
not like, we have a guest on and then we go away for 3 months. I mean, we were pounding out guests, if you will, weekly, definitely a few a month. And, that still is going to be the plan going forward. The format's not going to change. We're working on a lot of things, looking to do a live program. Things like that. But good
And then
stuff.
I would be remiss not to give some gratitude to our producer, Dave Sturcio. He's the one who helps us out. And a lot of these episodes, we have technical difficulties, and he helps us out. So, big shout out
I
to.
heard there was a rumor Dave was on the Parkway with a George Pickens welcome sign. Then he realized he wasn't in Dallas. He was on the New Jersey Garden State Parkway. So,
well, yeah, that's a big get for him. But
yeah.
Dave's, I guess, self-proclaimed third consigliere, so helps us out a lot, and also runs Chop Sports Media. He has a bunch of shows he does, obviously Dallas, and then a lot of wrestling. He's got a big event in July at the Tiki Bar in Point Pleasant. I think it's July 14th or 15th. So check him out. But I got to give Dave his props because first conversation I ever had with him, I was sold hook, line, and sinker about starting a podcast. So, and then I was doing it in person. Now I'm doing it from my boys' bedroom. They're in college, so they kind of fill up my time. But I'll pass
Well,
this
you have
along to
the
you.
great background too, Jimmy.
Yeah. Well, I gotta figure out my background. I don't know. I'm
Episode 51. I have to get something behind me besides a plain door.
Yeah. Well, the one episode,
my wife, I'm like Sloth from the Goonies. My wife locks me up here, so that's why I can't move. But I also, Jimmy, before we go, I have to mention the little logos here are fantastic. I want to say one thing. You didn't consult me on this. I had a Georgetown number 50 jersey for my man. I bought it. They changed the uniforms. Coach Thompson wanted the African Kente around the collar. I bought Georgetown navy blue number 50 for my man, Big O, Othello Harrington.
Oh yeah. Well, I was wondering. it was number 3.
Well, 3 was
it was Iverson, and then I'm like,
the greatest basketball player under 6 feet, without a doubt, of all time.
Yeah, very good for the answer. So I mean, but all in all, Jerry's been a great ride. So I'll pass this along to you.
More to follow, baby.
I'm going to do my Irish exit. I'll let you close this episode out. But thanks to Dave. Thanks to our listeners. Thanks to everybody. Follow us on social media at Sports Consiglieres. A lot of good stuff to come. But so I'll pass this along to you, Jerry, like I always do to end it out. But thanks for joining me. Thanks for putting the plans in motion to kind of getting the guests, getting different listeners, getting a different perspective, and then also your insights been really great. So.
Well, again, Jimmy, thanks for having me. Like Jimmy said, this has been episode 50. This has been our recap episode. We discussed the numerous guests that we had. We're sorry if we missed anybody. We appreciate all the guests we've had on. It has been an absolute blast. Please stay tuned for episode 51, which will be coming shortly. Tonight, let's go Knicks. Let's go our New York Yankees. Take care, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Take care. Have a good afternoon.
That wraps up 5-0. Take care.